Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Vegan Spirituality online gathering. My name's Lisa Levinson. I'm the campaigns director for In Defense of Animals, and I also founded Vegan Spirituality and co-founded the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. If you're curious about vegan spirituality and want to know more, it is about exploring veganism as a spiritual practice. And we do this together in person. We have many groups across the country that meet monthly to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. And then we also have this online gathering. To learn more about the in-person gatherings, you can visit veganspirituality.com. And then to find out about the online gatherings, you are in the perfect place. Here we are together. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to my co-host, Judy Carmen, who is also a co-founder of the Interfaith Vegan Coalition and the author of Peace to All Beings and Homo Ahimsa, Judy Carmen. And she will introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Lisa. And we are so thrilled that Kam is here with us, Cameron Waters, who is the director of AUM Films, which stands for Animals United Movement, Films and Media. It's a nonprofit organization which focuses on promoting awareness and equality for all life. Kam grew up in Georgia in a church-going family and was a gospel singer and songwriter. Like many of us, although he was taught that eating animals was normal behavior, he began to question if that was really okay. He famously asked Kip, and I'm talking about Kip Andersen, who may join us in a little while. We're not sure if he may have gotten busy with something else. But if he does, that will be wonderful. He famously asked Kip at a Cowspiracy event if there was a spiritual way to kill an animal, and how would Jesus kill an animal? These two earth-shaking questions led Kip and Kam on a 5-year journey to answer those questions. So, Cameron, thank you for being with us. We know you've been incredibly busy and working so hard on this monumental task. So, but we are just can't wait to hear from you. I know everyone is really interested. So maybe we could start out with a statement that I saw. Christspiracy exposes, quote, the biggest cover-up in 2,000 years, unquote. How would you describe that cover-up, and what does it have to do with Jesus?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, that's a big one to start with. So it's quite the rabbit hole, so to speak. And essentially, yeah, Christspiracy, as you mentioned, really centers around this central question of is there an ethical way to kill an animal, a right way to kill an animal? And more specifically, is there a spiritual way, or even how would Jesus, as a figure of peace and, you know, compassion, kill an animal? And the reason why is because the previous, Kip, my co-director, his previous films looked at the plight of the animals through more so animal agriculture and the environmental impact with Cowspiracy, and then What the Health showed the health implications. Seaspiracy showed the oceans, but he always kind of had an idea that at some point he wanted to cover the just strictly ethical topic, but it's a very challenging topic to cover as a film because you end up having to show all of this really this footage that's really hard to watch for most people because it's slaughterhouse footage and suffering and all of this. But when we met and this religious angle kind of came in from my background growing up in Christianity and trying to understand why in my particular tradition there seemed to be some contradicting opinions in the scriptures about the treatment of animals versus eating plants, etc. I don't want to give away too much, but maybe we can get into some of it on this chat. But essentially, once you get into religion, you understand that, our ethics, whether you're religious or not, our ethics are in every culture are founded primarily by the dominant religion of that culture. It's like a trickle down effect. In the West, Christianity dominates quite a bit. In the Middle East, you have a mix of, Judaism, Islam, some Christianity, and then Far East, you get into Buddhism and Hinduism and these things. And so that morality kind of, comes to us in our different cultures from our religious underpinning. So in the way that the other films, Cowspiracy, What the Health, Seaspiracy, looked at the organizations that talked about environment, talked about health, and these kind of concerns that we have as humanity. If you want to look at ethical concerns, it is important to look at these big organizations and these, kind of religious foundations to understand, what the answer is to how we could, or if we can, humanely kill and consume animals and animal products. But also Christspiracy covers, just the strict ethical, philosophical implications. We get into psychology, philosophy, all of these things. But on that journey, to answer your question, there's a massive cover up that's revealed specifically around Christ and that story of the original Nazarene movement and what they were really about in regards to their relationship and understanding of animals and faith. But really, that is only a reflection of kind of all the spiritual traditions in a way, and this kind of core piece of compassion that's been somewhat, lost over time in so to speak, in the overall picture. Most religions don't always put that at the forefront, but the reality is that we reveal in the film is time and time again, as we go down the rabbit hole on these questions, we find ourselves revealing this information within these religious traditions that point towards a direction that maybe we didn't really realize we were gonna uncover from the outset.
Yeah, so you got it. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you must see it and find out this, go down the rabbit hole with Kam and Kip and see the details involved in this, and the beautiful way they have shown that the real ethics behind most religions is not to eat animals, not to harm animals. And I just notice here that Kip has joined us. Kip, thank you so much.
Oh, nice.
For coming along. And we just love having you. We have loved meeting Kam, and everybody's anxious to hear from both of you. So I'll just introduce you briefly. Kip Andersen is an American filmmaker, producer, writer, entrepreneur, and the founder of AUM Films and Media, which Kam is the director of. Which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on promoting awareness and equality for all life. He is known for his documentary films such as Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, What the Health, and Seaspiracy, and of course now this widely acclaimed and amazing film, Christspiracy, The Spirituality Secret. So I encourage all of you to see those other films, and of course, Christspiracy if you haven't seen it yet. So, what we were asking Kip, what we were asking Kam was about the biggest cover-up in 2,000 years, and I know you don't want to reveal the whole thing because there's still some people who haven't seen it yet. But so the next question is that it's been stated that this film just might redefine what it truly means to be human, and then parentheses E for humane. So tell us more about that vision. I don't know if you want to take turns answering the questions, or both of you answer them, but go for it.
What it means to be, answers the question, what does it mean to be a human being? Redefines it. Yeah, it's Yeah, at the core of it, where there's spirituality and there's religion, at some point we chose to name ourselves. We could have named ourselves the two-legged wise ones. We could have named ourselves whatever, so many different names. We chose of all the adjectives to separate ourselves from the other animal kingdom that is our family. And that's a whole other conversation too. People talking about sentience of plants and sentience of animals. We are from the animal family. And so what defined us that we said we're different is that we are humane beings. The rest, whatever. And I feel that's one of the most powerful parts, in the film. We touch on it just very briefly, but at the core essence of everything in this film and the ethics of our relationship with animals and how we've been bestowed upon how we need to treat others is humanely. And if we're not doing that, then it's not alignment of who we called ourselves. Either we called ourselves to one day actualize, that's who we'd one day be, or we called ourselves because we once were that genuinely, and then we kind of strayed away for that for thousands and thousands of years. But what I feel what's amazing is the time that we're living in with films like this and other things that are coming out. And I feel really since 2012, there's a reemergence of kind of coming full circle or spiraling up, if you want to call it that, of us really reclaiming ourselves as humane beings, human beings. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful title that we named ourselves. So now we're actualizing it finally once again. Kam?
Thanks, Kip. Kam, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, just I guess in addition to it, I know a lot of times when we're discussing animal rights and some of these topics, there can be this conversation where, people who are maybe a little more skeptical about animal rights might be really skeptical of the idea that, feeling as if we're trying to make animals equal to humans and that we're all the same and this and that. And I do think that it is important to understand that we are different. All animals are different from each other, and we're very, very distinct and unique. But I think it is that quality that Kip was just talking about and what this humane being alludes to with our, we kind of touch on this in the film, our mirror neurons, our ability to empathize, our ability to understand the plight of others. And really, in some ways, our intelligence, though there are animals that have all kinds of layers and levels of intelligence that we don't have, we do have a specific kind of intelligence to, specialize and create tools and do all these things. And with that comes a lot of power. But how do we use that power is most important to understand. And I think that definition of humane, really, really lends towards utilizing that power in such a way that we're protecting and honoring the life of, the other animals in our animal family. So.
Well, and when you think about how many religions hold on to the golden rule, which is basically to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it seems like that's like a core value, and that we've, as Kip was saying, we kind of strayed away from that core value. But when you go back and dig deep, you find that in so many religions. So, another thing we want to know is what kind of reactions are you getting from Christians who have seen the film? Because for a lot of them, this has got to be shocking information that they've never heard before.
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of smaller, a lot of smaller screenings for a long time building up to this, and we've had everything across the board from every religious background to atheists to conservative, very hardcore conservative Christians to liberal Christians. And overall, there's always going to be those outliers. It's been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal. It's been really beautiful because I feel again, when we launch online, it's going to be a whole nother ballgame, but of how many people are going to be watching it. But sometimes those people who are against the film or what we're trying to say, their voice speaks really loud online, because you can have 10 people posting 100 things. And it seems like, oh my God, everybody's, trying to bash it, when in reality, I feel it's going to be a very minor amount overall, because at the core of it, we're not bashing religion, we're not bashing Christianity whatsoever. We're removing the veil and showing the beautiful, compassionate nature of who Jesus Christ is. Like, that's it. Is like, you're trying to find whether, like, okay, maybe he ate animals, maybe he didn't, if he would do it, but our intention is really coming out of, of shining the light on the Nazarene movement, on who Jesus really was at the core, that we feel we found through this study. And for me, my journey exploring this for the first time, it's brought me a connection to Jesus that I never had before, and other religions too, but I didn't grow up going to church at all. And so it's been really, really nice to see that. And then on that note, we've had people come to screenings, and a lot of people, when you're growing up, you go to church, and then you're 18, 19, you go to college, you're like, oh, I'm done with that. And we've had several people who've come and say, thank you so much. I feel a reconnection to Jesus, because before felt like it was some holier figure that's kind of, hammered on your head. And this is like revealing someone who's, more humane being, like you can actually relate to as an activist, of someone you can really look up to, and like, wow, this person is, I say badass, but lack of a better term, like, wow, this is incredible. And this whole movement is so aspirational, so inspiring. And at the core of it, it just aligns. And I feel when people are trying to get across the dogma of what they've been brought up in, like Bible thumping, when you really remove that, how would Jesus kill an animal? No one can answer if they're trying to fight. And that's what's so beautiful when we're going up against debates against people, mostly Kam will be doing that part. But when you remove that, and all of a sudden you come to this like very human level, okay, would Jesus really do that? If he was here today in 2024 particularly, and there's a lamb, and there's a knife, and there's a, Whole Foods here, it's just, and that's where the argument kind of falls apart. You can get lost in scriptures and going back and forth. But I think that's what's fun about it too, with the Christian angle of just removing everything at the core of who Jesus was and his message. Of course, it would extend to animals. So that's been good feedback overall.
Yeah, and I would just add to that overall, one of the things that people often do say in feedback, and Kip's totally right, that it's across the board, it really has been overwhelmingly positive. And I think the reason, one of the main reasons for that is when you see the film, it'll make more sense. But really, it's so driven just by questions, just by asking questions, And the idea isn't to just like make, to preach more. We don't need so much preaching as much as we need introspection, and we need guidance to better introspect and to ask the right questions and to press into those areas. And I think that's where we've seen in our test screenings, and even beyond into the theatrical screening, some of the feedback that we've gotten so far from that is that, people that even have admittedly gone into the screening ready to, disagree with it, by the end, even the ones who still have disagreements about it ultimately say, I appreciate the way that you've approached the argument. I appreciate the way that it's, just seeking to ask questions and seeking to go deeper. And everybody can benefit from that, regardless of the topic, is just to go deeper into what it is that we truly believe, who we truly are, and how we interact with the world around us and others, in a way that's as respectful as possible. And I think too, we're in a era now where, for so long we've heard going into the religion side of it, we've heard that religion's on the decline, and, more than ever, the world's been so much more secular, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we've actually seen quite the upturn in that, as of the last number of years. And I think more and more people, whether or not they're actually going to a religion, more and more people are seeking to understand more, at that kind of moral, ethereal level, and looking for something to grasp to as the world gets more and more chaotic. And honestly, not to go down a whole other rabbit hole, but I think as like AI and some of these things are kind of coming into the sphere, and we've got this other even potential higher intelligence that may in some way be interacting with us, and in some ways we may be subject to. It's starting to raise a lot of questions about how we treat those of quote unquote lower intelligence. And with every kind, there's a famous quote, I can't remember it, but with every kind of massive technological revolution, like the Industrial Revolution, et cetera, there's always a cultural counterpart that follows that has to be there to balance it out, and make sure that we don't implode, I think. And in some ways, I think this conversation is a big part of that.
I agree. I think there's talk that that we don't have souls and all of that sort of thing from AI people, and this is allowing, I think, a lot of people who have kind of left the church or left religion because of animal rights to look again and say, well, maybe maybe I can go back. And I know I've been a follower of Jesus for a long time, and he's like this great animal liberationist to me in my mind. And but knowing that has really helped me with my spirituality, whereas some of the old dogma that I was taught, and going to churches where there was no respect for animals, had that effect on me. Like, I don't want to go there. They don't understand. They don't feel the same way I do about animals. And that's just another reason I think this film is so important, because if we can get people to show this film in churches and other places of worship, it'd be great. And I absolutely love what you were saying, Kam, about posing it posing it as questions instead of preaching. I think that is absolutely huge in getting people to listen and to. But I love also the looks on people's faces when you would ask that question. People who had never thought that question before, or at least if they had quickly set it aside. So that was amazing. But I wondered if you'd had any follow-up with any of those people that you did interview on the film who were shocked, and we could see it on their faces. Did any of them go vegan? Did you hear from any of them?
The ones that aren't mainly the Buddhists, we have not heard from them yet. So
the one I will share, that's fun in that way, is two of my childhood pastors are in the film, and I went back to them and asked them, these questions, and one of them says something to the effect of, him eating a steak every once in a while won't, detract the coming of the kingdom of heaven, or this or that. I forget the way that he exactly words it, but essentially he uses that. He says, basically it doesn't matter if I eat a steak as to whether or not, God's kingdom is going to be manifest, etc. And another clip that I can't wait to release is later in that interview. Kip actually asked him and said, well, what, because he was talking about how the kingdom of heaven, there's all these feasting because it's this, utopic kind of thing. And Kip said, well, what are we eating? And then he started laughing and said, well, I don't know, but it's probably not steak. And so even in that interview, you saw the gears turning as we were talking. And again, the interviews themselves are a microcosm of what we're talking about, because that's all an interview is just asking questions. And there's so many different cases literally in the interviews, which we're so excited. And so for anyone who has seen the film, or anyone who hasn't, but even if you have seen the film, get excited, because we plan to release all the extended interviews over time. And it's just so fascinating to see how just asking questions to these individuals over time, you see the gears turning and the ways that yeah, maybe just there's certain kinds of revelations happening, least of which, you know, being the Oxford professor in the film, the kind of climactic moment that everyone always refers to and talks about when, she's talking about the temple cleanse and has this whole aha moment. There's just so many of these moments where people are just kind of, like you said, they've never really thought about this. And so they're in real time trying to process it. And it usually does kind of come to a place where there's at least some openness to the discussion. Yeah, most of the time. But there are some that shut it down.
Yeah, it's just amazing. That's one of my favorite things, I think, about it, was watching people's gears turning. And because the question, it's so clear, but you're not preaching it. You're just saying, well, how would Jesus kill an animal? And they're just going, I can't picture it. They just can't picture it, because that is one thing that has been saved in all the talk about Jesus and his teachings, was that he was all about love. And so they go to that, and then they go, wait, so how could he kill an animal? And so, yeah, for the gears just turn, and yeah, it's just amazing. And but I think it's also a good lesson for all of us as activists, to see how powerful questions can be without preaching. And it just, you did such a great job on that. So I wanted to ask what your plans are for going forward to get more people to watch it, the entire world, of course, and to be transformed by Christspiracy. So it sounds like you're going to release some more interviews. And of course, we at the Interfaith Vegan Coalition and Vegan Spirituality definitely want to help you in any way we can. Because, I mean, this is our be all and end all, is what you all are doing. And so this tool is something we did not have before, and we're totally blown away that we have it now. So what are some of the plans that you've got going forward?
Well, thank you so much for your support, and everyone who's listening. Really appreciate that. Which goes into our release, because it's going to be a collaborative effort. We're releasing it online. The exact details and exact date we don't have yet, but it looks like right around a month, depending on when people are listening to this, if it's all live, but around June 5th, middle of June is the goal. But we don't have an exact date. And the plan is to release it online through a pay it forward method, so that everybody has access to it, whether you have funds or you don't. And that was a big exciting thing of why we left, why we left Netflix. This was a Netflix original. We took it back. One of the big factors of us taking it back is so it doesn't get lost in the Netflix matrix, where it just gets locked up, mainly like Seaspiracy did. So now we're going to be able to release it on our website and our possible platform at some time through a pay forward method. So when you're going to be able to watch it, you can offer to pay it forward to help support us making more content, sharing it with other people. Or if you don't, you can just watch it. And then after the film, you might be inspired to share with other people. We really encourage, after watching it, whether you pay it forward or not, is we're going to have a feature where you can add in emails and ideally even phone numbers. And so after you watch it, is to then share it with everybody. And so as we did a Kickstarter fundraiser campaign, as much as that was for raising funds, it was also about building a community, so that when we release online, we're really doing all this all together. We made the film, and you said it perfectly. This is a tool. We built the tool. It took us a long time to build the tool. Now it's the tool for everyone can use, no matter who you are, and to have, to share the tool with who you are, for your friends, family, and to share it with the world. So that is our big plan. And then, as Kam said, release all the extra content that we couldn't do with Netflix. Every one of these interviews is around an hour and a half to 2 hours, and they're fascinating. Of all the films I've been involved with, is mainly the fourth, fifth one. This one has the most, by far, interesting, full interviews. And so we're going to have a feature where you're going to be able to watch those as well. And that's really exciting. And then we're going to do a lot more content. We have a school platform, if anyone's heard of School, SKOOL. that we want to encourage people after they watch, or even now, go to school, Christspiracy School. And Cam has already done a couple great master classes on some of the content in the film. I just did the first one, and we're going to build a community there and do a lot of fun activism, fun sharing content. So it's going to be a really fun one. I mean, that's the goal of making this fun, because it's not just going to be like a theatrical release where it's like we have a week. This is the long play, you know, so we want to have people staying in it and having a lot of fun with it, having a lot of powerful activism. And we have, you know, I could go on, but we have meal plans, we have meditations, we have a lot of stuff planned.
Yeah, and I would just add to that too. I saw even in the Q&A someone mentioning feeling like maybe losing the way it's worded, losing Netflix being a loss, but the just a reminder, in case, you know, anyone isn't aware of our whole Kickstarter and everything that we did, we didn't necessarily lose Netflix. We actually chose to go away. They wanted to keep the film and make the film in a particular way. We just didn't feel that film was going to have the same impact that the film that we have now could make, especially in the long term. And so it even to us at first, it was a hard decision, but then once we kind of made that decision, the world really opened up into the possibilities of what we can do, and understanding that though films can go absolutely really, really viral on Netflix, it's still within like about 3% of the world's population. Like if you look up the Netflix stats, I think it's somewhere around that. And there's just so many places in the world that, you know, can't see this film. And if it was just on one exclusive platform. So it is a big win. It may, who knows, maybe it will just explode. There are films, just by the way, that, you know, since the pandemic, I think really changed a lot in terms of how digital media is shared, right at the peak of where social media has been and all of that. And there were quite a number of films that came out over the last 3 or 4 years, completely independent digitally, that have been massively seen. And, you know, people aren't, you know, these platforms are actually losing viewerships and subscribers quite a lot right now. And so I think it's all in all a big win for the film, for the animals, for all of us. And like Kip said, a tool where we don't make it just exclusive to one place, where everyone is going to have access to it in some form or another. And in that way, we can just get, you know, the maximum views and maximize the message getting out there. So
Our goal is to have, again, eventually 1 billion views to save billions of animals. And it's a real, you know, first is like, is that too ambitious? It's real, because especially if we did the theater run and just putting out contests, it's just so triggering. It gets, you know, like what the health was. There's so many polarizing points about it. And when you have it polarizing, the one good part about that is there's communication, and it goes back and forth, and then it trends, and then it goes big. And this film is just so ripe for that. And so not only are we going to have it on our website, we're going to have it on YouTube, we're going to eventually have it on Amazon Prime. It's going to be, you know, we see it's going to have way more views than Netflix ever would. So, and be able to have a community that we can build upon. So it was a great decision that we made difficultly, but we're grateful we did in the long run.
It sounds like a great decision. So it sounds like the next thing for people to do is go to school. And how did you say it? Christspiracy School.
yeah, if you go,
.com.
yeah, actually, there is a live link to it. One easy way to get there is at christspiracy.org, which we still have live. There's a button on there that says join the movement, and that'll take you straight into our school. But you can also search at school.com, SKOOL. I believe it's school.com/Christspiracy community, if I'm not mistaken. But if not, at school.com, you can search Christspiracy and it'll come right up. And it's pretty big. It's, you know, we got a couple thousand people in there, I think, already that just came off the back end of seeing the film and others hearing about it. But it is, I would say, other than our social media too, you know, obviously follow our social media because there's a lot of activity there. But I think kind of the core inner circle has moved, you know, more to our school platform. We did have a private Facebook community for a while where we were giving updates, and we still do that sometimes there. But we're trying to move everything towards school, because school has a lot of benefits to the platform for being a bit more education based rather than it's a whole other discussion, but social media can it's in all of its beauty also has the darker side with all the vanity and just, you know, getting lost in entertainment and doom scrolling and everything. So school is like a really clean place to go and just learn and converse with others who really want to focus on this topic. So that's where we're focusing that energy. Yeah. And it's live right now. So yeah, check it out for sure.
We did post the link in the chat. So it's
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks, Lisa. And Lisa, do you want to open up for questions? I think we've got about 20 minutes.
Yes, I think that would be great. We do have some wonderful questions. And so we're taking them from the Q&A box here. Some of them you guys have already answered, which were about how do we watch Christspiracy. People have been waiting for a long time. Also, people are curious if you are going to make the film available for house and small groups.
For house?
House and small groups. Yeah, yeah. That's actually something we're just working on right now. We're partnering with a particular tech company that's going to make it really, really easy for us to do group screenings, almost like an Eventbrite meets streaming, and it's going to be really exciting. There's a way that you can elect to host a screening and, you know, almost gamify people coming to join it and everything like that. So we're going to be doing that, and we definitely, yeah, we really want to encourage people to get together at homes, ideally too at churches or other places of worship, you know, temples, synagogues, all the places that we can screen it, because we definitely feel after doing the theatrical release, this film particularly hits differently when people are congregated. There's something about I think the collective experience together, being able to talk about it with others. It's a lot to process. And it's so fascinating. Like Kip was saying, it sparks conversation, but the best conversation isn't in even comment sections. It's person to person, you know, over a meal afterwards. And we definitely feel that we want to encourage people to congregate together to watch it. And we'll have ways to incentivize more people doing that.
Perfect, because we do have our vegan spirituality groups that people meet in across the country, and that would be a good forum for folks to host it. I would love to do that with our Los Angeles group, actually.
Definitely.
Awesome.
We want it shown in not a billion churches, but we want to show it in a lot of churches too. So we're definitely doing that. We're gonna have a very easy way, as Kim's saying, to be able to have people do their own screenings from churches to actually movie theaters. So that's exciting.
Oh, wonderful. There was also a question about, I know you spoke about Netflix and your decision to shift out of that contract so you have more freedom to do what you wanted to do with the film. And some folks were asking, will it be available streaming somewhere to share online, or?
Yeah, it'll be streaming. Initially, we're streaming it on our own website, Christspiracy.com, Christspiracy.org, Christspiracy.com. Either one of those will funnel to it. And so it'll be on, that's how you'll be able to watch it. And then eventually it's going to be on YouTube, Amazon Prime, you know, Roku, all the other ones where it's just everywhere. But we're going to release it online for ours on our platform for a while. And again, it's going to be no matter where you are, your demographic, your economic scale, whatever, you will be able to watch it. So that's exciting.
Perfect. And also there's a question here. In the film that Jesus, this is from Brian, Jesus is a teacher, is emphasized, specifically sharing the ethic to have compassion for all living creatures. And Brian's wondering if either of you could share your thoughts on how the Christian faith has moved away from teaching ethical living to forgiveness for unethical behavior and promises of eternal life for believing that Jesus is the Son of the biblical God.
That's a deep one.
Yeah.
How much time do we have? I mean, I think without getting too theological about it, I just think I think in a lot of ways the unethical treatment of animals in a cultural sense has deeply affected spiritual traditions, and ultimately that has maximized since, I would say, the 20s to 50s, where animal agriculture took off with slaughterhouses and factory farming and all of that, right? It's just like, even if you look back to a lot of the early Christian traditions, we explore, the Nazarene movement in our film, and how they had a particular ethical kind of understanding of of animals that maybe has been overlooked. But even up more recently, you look at like the foundation of the Methodist Church by the Wesleys. They were vegetarian. They had a deep feeling about it. And there's a lot of that, but I think there's been ways all throughout time where culture, in the time of Jesus and all that, you've got the Roman Empire, and they had a massive animal sacrifice system that fed, a marketplace of meat and all of these things. And I think that clash of cultural ideas ultimately bends, an ethical way towards, being a little more lax about these things. I think that, these movements were founded on compassion, but then in order to achieve, wider acceptance, when the world at the time is predominantly in this kind of carnistic mindset, things just that aspect falls away. And as you say, again, I don't want to get into the theological side of it, but forgiveness of sin, these types of things take the forefront in more ways, and all beautiful too. I mean, we all need forgiveness, right? And we all need these things as well. But I think that part's a little harder, and so it goes away. And there's the economic incentive, like I said, especially since the 50s and whatnot, like the amount of money in animal agriculture and everything. And then we always say too, I just think it's been so long ago, especially, speaking for the Christian tradition, it's been so long ago that some of these original movements and kind of conversations that were happening. I mean, we know St. Paul, who dominates the New Testament, is explaining in his letters to all these different cities where the faith is spreading, that there's this argument about those who, think eating meat's okay, and those who prefer to abstain from eating meat. So it's been an argument around for a long time, but the reality is like they say, one side of the argument won, and history's kind of been written by the winners. And so people like my pastors that I was talking about earlier, they just don't even know any better, because it's been so far removed, this conversation, or even thinking that it's a conversation to have. And industrial agriculture, animal agriculture hides it behind walls where you don't even think about it. You're not confronted by it, so there's no reason to ask questions about it. But yeah, we really do trust that Christspiracy is going to start to put that conversation more in the forefront. Hope that kind of answers it. I ended up talking longer than I meant to, but some of those questions are a deeper theological question, probably for another chat.
Or maybe for the school platform.
Or the school platform. Yeah, go drop that question in school, and we'll keep the conversation going there. There's a lot of people in school that have studied this topic a lot too, beyond just Kip and I, that, when we can't, because we're busy doing a lot too. So when we can't always chime in, there's people in there that will answer questions and, have great conversations. So that's a great point. Yeah.
And then Chris has a question that's very interesting one, I think. Why doesn't the church acknowledge how Jesus would treat animals?
Why don't would they acknowledge it? I feel because if they acknowledge it, they're going to have to look in the mirror. That's that's a big one. And that's why it's just very triggering for people, because if you go down that rabbit hole and you do it really openly, and you don't, people think we have an agenda, this and that, but when we're doing these films, we're prepared that there's going to be backlash in this. So we really look at it from all angles. I always say with all these films is we want to look at it from a very critical eye, and to show, if anything, proactively share, just knowing what the points will be against the film. But anyway, kind of diverting there. As far as why I feel they don't want to address the situation, is they're going to have to look at themselves, and they're going to have to, it's going to be a big transformation, not only from themselves especially the pastors, from themselves, then their family, but then the entire congregation. I mean, that's it's a big jump, and it's a big leap, and to go to those places, you have to be very bold, like Kam was. He was a leader in his church community, and you have to be made of a certain sort of leading to be able to do that. So I think the main thing is they don't want to really.
Yeah. And then, I mean, yeah, without diverting too much, I do think there is, as we kind of loosely explore in the film as well, there is that kind of economic incentive as well, that where, in some way, not looking at yourself in the mirror with something like this, but learning and preaching and discussing, mercy and peace and all of these concepts over time, but not addressing this one. It's a level of disconnect that's happening. It's a cognitive dissonance, and really a soul dissonance in a way, if you want to, go down that discussion. But I think that dissonance creates a disconnect from one's own personal spiritual connection. And when you have that disconnect, you need certain church leadership and these kind of things to guide you in this and that. And ultimately, I do feel maybe there's a fear. I think that if people got this, people would just be congregating even more and so excited and having these beautiful feasts and all this. But I think there's maybe this internal fear too that is really deep beneath the surface, that was at the surface back in the early church in the first century, where when people start to ask these questions, systems around them kind of start to crumble. Like there's a whole thing in Emperor Trajan in 100 AD was going back and forth with Pliny the Elder, who's one of the generals around the area that's now Turkey. And Pliny's complaining to the emperor saying, hey, all of these Christians are moving into town, and they're meeting in secret, and they're sharing their knowledge with each other, and the word's spreading. And we've noticed that as word spreads, the sacrificial temples are all shutting down, and there's no meat in the markets, and we're freaking out because of this. And they had to kind of handle their business, and they actually did, violently stopped that movement from happening. And I think, again, it's just, there's that fear of some of these systems crumbling, and livelihoods. I think people feel threatened, like, oh, what about the farmers? There are and that's a great question. Yeah, what about the farmers? They're some of the best people on the planet, that we need them more than anyone else. But it's more of opening the question, well, do they need to be animal farming? Is there other alternatives? And I think, people just don't know that they can think that way. So they think that we're just trying to overthrow everything and that there's no alternative, So anyhow, I digress, but there's some of that too.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. It's kind of opening our minds as we open our hearts to new ways of being, new ways of farming. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's really, really, really exciting, actually. I know Rebecca's asking here that when she brings up Jesus being a vegetarian, sometimes people will say, well, he obviously ate fish. And do you expect to release more on the fish aspect of the Bible?
Yeah, well, the film covers it very quickly. It actually used to be even more quick, but in our most recent edit that went to theaters and is going out, we slowed it down just a little bit. But it's a lot of information to cover that particular topic, and our film is 90 minutes long, and we cover so many topics, so we really crunched it all in there, and we definitely optimize the film for like the TikTok generation who just is used to information coming really fast. So it's in there if you saw the film and maybe missed it. But yes, we are covering that topic extensively over time because it's one of the #1 comments and questions constantly. We just put out a piece of content. In fact, yesterday, I did a street interview or kind of debate, almost conversation with some street preachers with signs at this big mega church conference. And there's a nice chunk of that debate where we talk about the fish story kind of question. And we only scratch the surface of it, but we do cover it with some interesting points. So definitely check that out. You can see it on our Instagram or on our Facebook. And I think if you type WWJD in the comments, it'll take you to YouTube, but it's on our YouTube channel as well. That particular conversation. But yeah, we'll be putting out more and more materials that dive deep into the scriptures and ways to really understand that. And again, just asking questions about what are the texts, what are the original translations really saying? How authentic is this? And even if it is, there's an argument that can be made about those fish stories as they are in the scripture that still doesn't advocate that we do, industrialize fishing at the scale that we are right now. And yeah, so it's a very deep conversation.
Thanks for addressing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have maybe time for another question or two. So one is, do you have plans to have aspects of the Spiracy films, the series that you have, to TikTok, Reels, etc., to kind of port aspects of those films onto the social media?
Absolutely. We already have quite a bit of Cowspiracy and What the Health, Seaspiracy. Since it's a Netflix, I mean, that's an example. Since it's a Netflix original, we only have so much that we share fully, but the other ones was a license deal. But we have a lot of the content spread out there, and absolutely with Christspiracy, we're going to have so much content that is across all the media channels, and along with a lot of the content that got cut out. Our initial cut of the film was 4 hours, and it's an incredible 4-hour film. Like, if you have the time for it, it's probably the best version, really. So we have so much amazing content that we're going to be putting out through all those channels for sure.
Cool. That's so great. Just to know that now that you are in charge of all of it, you can disseminate it however you like to all these different platforms, and you certainly have the skills to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another question. Do Christians follow the Noahide laws? One of them is Tasar Bale Chaim, and this one I should know how to say that, given that my background is Jewish. The prohibition against causing unnecessary pain and suffering to animals. So that is, it's a concept that the idea is to reduce the suffering of animals. And this, and Vivian says she's been talking to so many rabbis and Orthodox Jews about this prohibition, as it sounds like Vivian's advocacy is to do that. So this is maybe a question about these laws.
Yep. The Noahide laws are very, very fascinating. We don't cover that in the film necessarily, but again, this is all more content that we want to make over time. Not even just for Christianity. We want to go into the tenets and the yamas of, other faiths as well. But yeah, just on that point, it's very fascinating because you've got, most people know about the 10 Commandments. A lot of people want to talk about kosher law and everything, but that's the interesting thing about, say, kosher law is, in reality, the kosher law is only really meant for people of the Jewish faith or of the Jewish heritage. If you look into it, you realize that. But the Noahide laws are meant to cover everyone. That's what everyone. The scriptures say that everyone should be following that. And of course, we know Noah was the rescuer of the animals. But then afterwards, there's the conversation of, oh well, God granted them animals to eat after that. But the fascinating thing about that is that if you look at the Hebrew translation of what's said there in Genesis 9, everybody quotes that. That's when God allowed us to eat animals. It says he allowed us to eat every moving thing or everything that creepeth. And that Hebrew word, remus, actually means bugs. It's completely separate from livestock and birds and fish and all the animals that we do eat as human beings. But it's not that. It's a completely separate word. And So like you said, rabbinical tradition, if you go deep into it, they'll tell you like, yeah, it's these creeping things, and it's only kind of like an allowance because of, in the story, the earth has been flooded, the vegetation's destroyed, maybe it's harder to get, plant foods in that moment, but it was never meant to last. It was kind of like this allowance just for this time as everything was being restored. And if it, kind of a survival scenario, if so to speak. But then the Noahide laws come in, and most people read it almost like a kosher sense of like, oh, you can't have the animal with the blood in it. Or I think one way that it's worded, the one that she's speaking of, is like, you can't rip the limb of a living animal or something. And people will say, oh, it literally means, yeah, you can't dismember an animal while it's alive, but you can do it while it's dead and then eat it. But the reality is that word living it literally just means an animal that has life. You can't dismember an animal who has had life, who has had the breath of life or the spirit of the ruach or whatever. So yes, deep, deep stuff that they just don't teach us. I didn't learn this stuff, you do learn amazing things in church. You learn about, like, mercy, forgiveness, these kind of things, but you don't really go into how specifically it applies to the animal kingdom. And I think the world would be a better place if everybody could, just get this information.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this incredible opportunity to hear from both of you filmmakers of Christspiracy, this revolution that we're in the midst of. Of course, I guess it started 2,000 years ago, but here we are continuing it. Thanks to you. And I want to just take a moment, because we are towards the end of our time together, to really thank both of you, because I know your time is precious and we're just so grateful to have a bit of it. And we also want to thank everyone who's joined us, and also Dave Simon, who's been helping us with some behind the scenes work today. And wanted to see if either of you want to do a closing, either intention, prayer, or anything like that for us. If not, we will do that.
Oh, wow. Do you have one, Cam?
I can. I think you should hit us with a loca somasta. Oh, I thought you were gonna.
No, I was just gonna, we were gonna have in the film of God is good, God is great, eat meat, the one that Cam grew up.
Let's not do that one. I agree. He's making a joke. Growing up, there was a funny phrase. Well, they thought it was funny. Good food, good meat, good God, let's eat, which is just, but again, what we have to realize is that word meat never actually meant animal flesh. That word has been co-opted. It really just means food, but they meant animal flesh when they were saying it. But anyways, Kip, why don't you do a little loca? Maybe.
Loca. This is Loca Samasta Sukino Bhavantu, which is, I'm sure many of you listening know this. May the thoughts, words, and actions of my own, of our own, benefit. Good. I do this every single day. I do it so fast. Loka samasta sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukino bhavantu. May the thoughts, words, and actions of my own contribute in some way to that happiness and that freedom for all beings.
Absolutely
beautiful.
perfect.
Thank you so much, Kip. Beautiful.
Thank you. That is the perfect mantra to end on for this evening. And, this has been just a joy, an absolute joy to be part of this today. And thank you. If there's anything else you want to say before we close out.
I just want to say thank you all so much and just love everything you're doing. And I'm sure I speak for Cam, we could do this for hours, like, especially it's just so fun. And so thank you for spreading the kind word, the compassionate word, and the light for all spiritualities too. So yeah, we really are truly doing this all together. So thank you everyone listening. Stay tuned. It's going to be a fun ride and we're all doing it together. So really, really thank you.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Can
Yeah,
I
we're
share
there for you for sure.
can I share too, because I know a lot of the people here, I mean, this group is founded upon the kind of intersection of animal rights and spirituality, correct? And yeah, and I just feel it's important to I want to encourage everybody who is out in the world already, and doing this and speaking of this kind of crossover. And I think sometimes it can feel um a lot of people in the world currently, maybe it can feel like a challenge to be an animal rights person in the world, because sometimes it feels like there's so few. People who are spiritual sometimes can feel that same isolation, but you put the two together and it's like, well, wait a minute. Now you're like the few of the few, it can feel like. And I think in the animal rights movement, what I've seen is that, one thing that I have noticed about people kind of taking in Christspiracy is they're trying to understand, what does animal rights have to do with spirituality? Because for so long, it's been a conversation around um, more logical framework, especially over the last number of years, especially with science, and the diet side and health and these kind of things. But I want to encourage everybody here that, if we really want full liberation, I know Kip's a big fan, and I am too, coming from Atlanta, Georgia. Martin Luther King, he didn't give the "I have a plan" speech or the "I have the science" speech. He gave the "I have a dream" speech. And the dream is the world of the ethereal, it's the world of the spiritual. And I really feel that this movement infusing that aspect and moving out of the logic and the cerebral into the heart and into what it really means to be human and a humane being is the last and final how do I say it? The last and final aspect of, I feel, the movement really starting to breach into that feeling of liberation, just like, Dr. King. So it can feel isolated and, like an island at times, but be encouraged that this is right where you're supposed to be. Keep fighting the good fight. You all inspire me and Kip so much. And yeah, like he said, there's no place we'd rather be than amongst more people that are having this conversation.
oh, wow. That is music to our ears. Thank you so much for giving us this new tool to expand our vegan spiritual movement. We are all working on that together, collaborating and raising consciousness. So thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
truly blessed that we have each other, all of us here today. Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful evening.
To
To all beings.
all beings.